Hey everybody, happy Sunday here at our new time,
Whoa.
Design Details, where we
Wow.
demystify the marching arts and help your program cultivate greatness. How's everybody doing today?
Pretty
Doing good?
pretty good.
Doing
Yeah,
yes?
how you
Cool.
doing?
We're doing
It's
yes. I'm
it's been
doing
a good
great.
time.
I guess we should
It's
introduce ourselves. My name's Jordan, one of your hosts. I'm a music educator, drill designer out of Phoenix, Arizona.
and my name is Mike Kruger. I'm a composer, arranger, and music educator out of Cleveland, Ohio.
And I'm Holly Paxton. I am a color guard instructor and a music teacher in Phoenix, Arizona.
Now, I will tell you, Jordan, I was thinking, I know I said I was doing good, but I am. But I think for a lot of us, we're tired, right? We've had, I don't know about you, but it seems to be a long week, but it's for everyone I'm talking to. Because, like, I think midterms for people and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, it seems every year in October, it's mid October for everything ever. It always is like a week or two where it's just like really kind of hard. I don't know if you guys are experiencing that a little bit, but
yeah.
October's the longest month of the fall, like emotionally the longest. In a regular year, it's the longest
I was like
fall
counting the
season.
days. Is that right?
It's like
Pretty
but
sure.
like
emotionally, I
in a
get you.
regular year,
Yeah.
March is at least in Arizona. That's a month where you have a show every single weekend,
Right.
and now it's just crazy because I don't know about all the other places, but we've basically been adding more and more and more and more in-person school. So there's been
Yeah.
a lot of like structural changes. So whether it's a regular year or this year, October's busy.
Yeah, I was thinking about where we would normally be in a show year or a year where there was like a normal like some normalcy to it. This is usually kind of that slog for me at least. Like you've been to a few shows with your groups. Like there's this kind of weird balance of like usually by now there's some things that need to get fixed that can. There's some things that it's going to be really hard to fix with, this amount of time left, 2 or 3 weeks. Like you're kind of just sitting on what you got. Um, and then like on top of that, like you're saying, Mike, there's tests, there's for college, there's midterms, there's all these extra things going on. And it can just be a real slog. It can feel like you're doing a whole lot of stuff, but not a lot of progress. So
Mm-hmm.
I think for a lot of people, that's kind of where we're at, even without a show season. Like it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
kind of that time of year.
Yeah. And usually it's something I've noticed over the past few years is it seems to really be something around this time. I'm feeling it this year. I am. I
Yeah,
usually don't. I usually
that's
don't. That's why I
it's
usually
interesting.
am like everyone like kindergarten cop. Whoa, like like I'm like I don't get it.
Ooh,
Like 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 I don't know what's going on. I don't get it. But like this year, I'm like okay, I
yeah,
feel
I'm
y'all.
feeling it.
I
But
get
you
a
know
little
what?
more.
We're here. We're ready to roll. We're at our new time here on Sunday, which I'm super excited about.
Yeah.
Holly grabbed some coffee for us on our way home, so we're enjoying some of the Bucks. I don't like that's what we call it here in Scranton. It's the Bucks. That's an office quote. Um, I don't normally like pumpkin stuff, but they've got this pumpkin cream cold brew that is just delightful. It's so good. So
Enjoy it while it
Enjoy
lasts. I've
it.
heard rumors that it's going to be replaced by the Christmas drink soon. Christmas, holiday, winter.
we'll
All
just
I
go
know
back to
is
the bitter stuff.
pumpkin might be gone.
Uh, Enjoy it while it's here, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you're here for the first time, welcome. We're super happy to have you. If not, welcome back. This is part two of what we're calling You Be the Judge, which is our exploration of the tools that judges use cover, to communicate with everybody there, right? At a show, because they have a very finite amount of time to communicate. They have a lot of different tools to do that. So last week, we'll recap in just a moment. We talked about all the different tools that the judges have, and today we're going to talk a little bit about kind of our philosophies and our cycle of improvement once you have that information. Because hopefully, you're not just going to a show, getting numbers, and going like, "Well, that's what it is," or "Hey, that's here we are." Hopefully, there's a little bit more kind of after the fact that happens. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that today as well. So we're super excited to jump into it. I think it's best for us to start with a recap of kind of where we were last week. So we talked about some of the different tools the judges have. Some of the ones that we know about that are really obvious are like your final number at the end of the day, right? Or maybe your placement among all the bands that are there. And those can give us, like we talked about last week, some information. They can give us some information, but they don't really give us a very comprehensive amount of information, right? What does the score of like an 87.2 tell you, really? Well, if it was a grade, like in a class, like it's a B, does that mean
Yeah, I
anything?
have no idea. I mean, out of context, it has no. I mean,
Right.
it has no meaning unless it's comparison. Right.
That's a big point. Context is like 90% of the score.
Yeah, for sure. So last week we talked a little bit about how different organizations use boxes where they put people based on the quality of different pieces of what they do. That could be like visual performance put into box 4, which is the second highest kind of range of scores here. I've actually got a little.
Depending on the circuit you're using.
Right. Good
Right.
point.
And the one we're going to be referencing the most today, we're using one with the five box scale, with box 5 being the like
Yeah.
best. So
Yeah. And just a quick recap here. You're able to see my screen, right?
Yep.
Yep. So we're talking about these boxes here. So if you look at the subcategories on your sheet, you can see that they're probably lined up in some sort of order, kind of like these. So in this particular range, and a lot of them nowadays, as they're getting more standardized across the country, box 5 is your highest. In that 87 point whatever, the overall performance would be in box 4, but maybe you've got, some part like your maybe music performance is like a 79, right? Maybe it's right on the edge of box 3, and maybe your general effect is closer to like a 92 and a half or something like that. So you can have things that fall outside of that range of boxes, but ultimately it's averaged out and kind of puts you here, right?
Yeah.
So we talked about boxes. We talked a little bit about captions. What are some of the things we talked about in captions last week?
Well, generally there's a breakdown of like music and visual. So you have that's one element. So you've got like the performance aspect, music, performance, visual performance, color guard, percussion, those things are included in that breakdown. And then you also have from that, like that's performance elements, and you have also the design element, the effect. So you have different captions that essentially flow into these ratings, and like it breaks down it breaks down the numbers that goes into the placement. So like captions are, to me, are like where you really get your information.
Yeah. And as we'll see today, sub captions from there even more so, right? So when Mike's talking about breaking down, music and visual, even within music, you can put on a microscope and you can see, okay, well, a lot of the sheets that we talked about last week have we called it the what and the how. So what are you doing, or the composition score, and then how well are you doing it? And that's the achievement score. So that kind of goes into the sub caption part. And then finally, we talked about placement or rank, which I think is the one that we really didn't spend a whole lot of time on it, but we talked about how, okay, placement or rank, where did you rank within your class? Where did you rank on the whole day? What does that tell you? We also talked a little bit about how some different, organizations, some different sheets actually tell you, depending on how close you are to the other person, how, like, what that means. 0.9 points in a certain caption away from somebody is a significant difference, whereas 0.1 or 0.2 means that you two could go out there and perform your same show again and they might flip it. It's that close, right? So you can get a little bit of extra information from there.
Right. The value of attendance. Out of all of those, to me, out of like having the box or the rating, the captions, sub captions, or like the placement or the rank.
Yeah.
Out of all of that, the most important to me would probably be the captions and sub captions for me as an educator.
Yeah.
As a if you're competing somewhere and you make competition part of like what I think you said this last week, if you make competition part of what you're going to do, you should then do it well. And I think at some point, placement and rank does matter because it does give you comparison of people.
Sure.
And that could be towards ideologies and philosophy, like things that you want to accomplish. So that could be a really healthy thing. So like I find that to be a really interesting. I think the thing I find about judging sheets is that when it's done well,
Mhm.
it's really pretty informative, and
Yeah.
it can be
Mhm.
very educational. I think a lot of people kind of write them off.
Mhm.
Yeah, I really love the recap pages, the ones that don't just compare the final score, but the ones that compare all of the sub caption scores.
Mhm.
And that's the most beautiful piece of paper you can get at the end of a show because it tells so much information. And
Mhm.
if you're able to see any of the other groups performing as well, it's also helpful seeing, I don't know, just seeing the layout and how some groups can perform better in some captions and
Yeah.
like just be flipping around. It's much more interesting to see a show where you got first in one thing and fourth in another, and percussion got second and color guard got first. Uh,
It's interesting to hear. This is really interesting to me now. Obviously, the three of these are really like closely tied together. You can't have one without the other. But Mike was saying the caption sub caption thing is what he focuses on. Holly, you're looking at the caption and sub caption ranks or placements. I'm obsessed with the boxes. Holly, I know Holly's seen me do this before, but I'll actually go through after a show day and look and see based on like a contest's like rubric, where did this person put us in relationship to the boxes, right? Because that's something that I'm obsessed with. What are they trying to say within those boxes? So it's interesting that all three of us
So
kind of have a different thing we focus on.
the
Mhm.
the reason I think for mine is, I'm glad we're talking about this because I never thought
Mhm.
about this before. The reason I have this is for me the captions is because it's for me it's a lot less subjective.
Right.
So to
Mhm.
me, a box and a rating has a little more subjectivity because there's more because there it has. I'm trying to think how I want to say this. I guess it's more open to flaw in a little bit from a judging perspective to me than a caption. You might disagree with something they say fundamentally, but there's also educational content probably provided,
Right.
like with comments. Because one thing it's not just numbers; it's a lot of comments. It's ideally written feedback, and to
Hope
me,
so.
that's the gold mine.
Yeah.
That's like very objective. Like, hey, your band could really use some work on the ballad on ensemble climbing. Like,
Mhm.
that's either
Numbers
true or false.
without comments don't really mean much.
Right.
So one of the big things we're going to talk about today is what we do next. So like we've talked about all these tools, right? But what's the next step? We did our show. There's like what's the process we go through in a season? So Jordan, I know that you've got a really nicely formatted version of like the life cycle of marching band
The life
development.
cycle, I love it.
Show
I'm
cycle.
obsessed. I'm obsessed with this stuff, and I'll tell you why. A lot of people have mistaken it in my life for like a solely competitive thing, or like a I just want to be first place thing. And I am very competitive, like the two of you know. I hold myself to a high standard, and I am a competitive person. But I just think that I've seen so many people squander a good opportunity when you
Mhm.
get good people in front of you giving you feedback. And so I've thought, pretty intensely as we were getting into this you be the judge thing about what my cycle is. And I just called it like a cycle of improvement. Basically, after the show, whether the group is first place or near the bottom, been in both places, right? Um, no matter what, no matter where I am in there with my group, I kind of always go through the same cycle. Um, First off, and I didn't put this on the sheet, but first off, we celebrate that night. Like just enjoy your time with the students and your staff and be grateful for your time. Like forget about everything that night. Wake up the next morning and do these things. Or after your show, I guess for some of these, do these things. Make sure you're enjoying yourself in the moment too. Number
For
one,
sure.
if you're looking for improvement, look for the weakness on the sheet. So, like we talked about last week with Mike's captions and sub captions, um, maybe you're first place in music, maybe you're first place in effect, but you're like fifth place on the visual sheet, right? Your visual performance is very, very low. Okay. Well, that's probably going to be the first place I'm looking, right? Do I want to focus on everything? Yes. But how many hours do we normally rehearse with a group? Like 6, 9 total hours over the week. You can't get to everything, right? So look for those biggest opportunities. So somebody scores you low in a category. The next thing you have to ask yourself is, okay, well, what does that mean? So look at your weaknesses on the sheet and then listen to that tape again, right? Listen to it carefully and listen to what they're saying. Hopefully, they're giving you some sort of feedback that relates to what's on the sheet, right? So if the sheet says lack of tempo control, okay, do they mean lack of tempo control over the whole show? Well, if they put you in box 4, probably not, right? They probably mean lack of tempo control on a certain part of the show.
Right.
From here, hopefully you're doing this stuff day of if you have a critique. Okay, so step 3 or my sub step 3, make sure you do those 2 things first and do them before you go to a critique where you get some one-on-one feedback time with the judge. And just ask them if you know what they can remember. It's hard sometimes for them to remember every detail because they've seen 40, 50 groups. They may not remember every detail of every show, right? But step 3, meet and discuss. Talk with them and critique. Get their feedback if you're able to. After you've done those things, watch the video, look for some solutions, and then step 5, plan for the rehearsal before. Like if you have rehearsal on Monday, have a game plan by Sunday night. I know that's extra work, extra planning for people on a day where they might have off, but that's part of that cycle of improvement is making sure that you have a good game plan for when you come back to it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember some of my favorite shows are the ones where, you know, you get the tapes, you listen to the tapes, you go to critique, and then on that bus ride home, all you and the rest of the staff can talk about are what the next rehearsal plans are. Usually doesn't even make it to waiting till Sunday night because the planning happens right after critique for a lot of us. It's like, oh, okay, well, we need to work on this, this, and this, and this is our order of events and our priority of like, we should address this one first. And I can't even imagine waiting till Sunday night. It's always so much more exciting on Saturday night.
Right.
That was what Dan and I used to do back in Missouri. But if we did a prelim final show, so like everyone would just be excited we're going to finals, and that's great. So everyone's happy. We would just sneak away for an hour and go in the back of the band U-Haul because everything was unpacked, and we'd close it down with one of the band dads, and we would look at the sheets, and the listen to the tapes of like the couple things, and be like, okay, we know they're judging against Knight, like, all right, so what are they looking for? What are we fixing? Like 2 hours of rehearsal here, and we always thought that was pretty fun. So I think it was always fun because like sometimes it was super fun for the staff to do it right then. Sometimes it was like nice, especially after kind of a tougher one, to be like, you know what, we'll do this tomorrow. Well,
I mean, it's different for everybody, and
right.
Different for every situation, even. Yeah,
man, those prelim finals are like the best time to show a judge that you've listened to them, because like there's things you can't change, but if they're like talking about dynamics in the big hit, it's like, you know, in the warm-up, take that crescendo a couple more times and be like, hey guys, let's work on this crescendo. And like the little things you can fix in between like a prelims finals, you know, not most shows don't run on prelims finals, but like, you know, there's stuff you can do to be like, oh look, we listened to you, and then they give you more points because they're like, you listened to me, nice.
I have to tell you a story, Holly, you just made me think of.
Oh no.
And it's related to all of this, I promise. There was a show back, it was the same show where we had a tuba student on a backwards march, fall back. I've never seen a tuba go in so many directions in a field. And like, he was like, I gotta get back to my spot. And he ran across the field just to realize he didn't have his bell. It was a show, and I love that kid. He was awesome. But that was not it. We had it was a circuit judging that we don't always know if we align our philosophy with. So anyways, they were a little more old school in the sense of they expected a little more of a louder, brighter sound. This is 2011, so it was very different 10 yeyears ago. And we were more of a contraband. We were more of a contraband approach. So in prelims, they kept telling us, we were only a band of 80, and the thing we kept hearing was like, That's a really good sound, but just need more. We just need more. It's a great forte. It's a great fortissimo, like, but it's just not loud enough. And we're like, well, if we go louder, and then I remember one comment was like, just blast that, and we're like, okay. So when prelims ended, we were like 6 overall in music. So during going to the finals, we were like, all right. Dan and I talked about it. I was like, can I tell the brass line? Like, this is what we're going to do? He's like, yeah. So they're all brass line. We're like, man, what can we do better? I was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to blast this stuff tonight. We're going to take this and we're just going to see what happens. We're like, this is the one time. And we went to 10th place in music. We got last place in finals. And I was just like, I don't know what to do. So that was
You can't.
I'll never forget. Dan, we were like, we don't know. That's okay.
Maybe they went a little too hard.
We
on
went
that
pretty
adjustment.
hard that finals night.
I can't do it. That's funny. It's like, well, that's too bad. You're not going to get that.
The point of all
I was
this,
like, they're gonna go. I was like trying to predict the end of the story, and was like, they're gonna get first place. This is gonna be a motivational story.
No, we went to the completely other end somehow. We were like, well, maybe we missed for this one a little bit.
The moral, I think here.
Yes, there's a point to this.
Well, you know what, something I really believe is that sometimes people, what am I trying to say? I think people are very good at communicating when they don't like something. I don't think everybody knows how to communicate well what they don't like. Does that make sense? So one reason that I kind of obsess over this stuff, and one of the reasons I listen to things over and over again, trying to prepare for rehearsals the next day, is that like sometimes they'll say something like, man, I can't think of a great example off the top of my head, but like, you know,
this moment just isn't working for me.
Yeah.
That's even more
I was trying to think of something like, you know, maybe like, oh, wow, the balance there really isn't that great, when really it's like an intonation thing. That's a really simple example. But like, okay, well, something's not right. And I think people are generally pretty good at communicating when something's not right, but maybe they're not always good at communicating what's not right. So it's really good. Like, it's very good to like take people's criticism, but also like kind of evaluate for yourself and make sure that the what of what they're telling you is correct. I guess that's kind of what I'm thinking. So
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's always the biggest thing for me, that I see other people when they get judges' tapes, and they're like, oh, well, this person doesn't know what they're talking about. That part is fine. And it's like, wait, pause, take a second. Like, there's a reason they said something, and maybe you don't agree with the reason they said, but it is worth looking at it with a fresh perspective and trying to figure out, okay, what was the thing that made that part just like not gel with this judge? Like, especially like if it's one judge 1 week, then fine. Maybe it was a fluke. But if it keeps being brought up week after week after week, and it's like that same part, it's like, maybe you just need to look at it. Maybe it's like one thing that you're not noticing, but you know, it's getting flagged for a reason. So take a look at it. Everybody see the dog?
For sure.
Hi, Pamper.
She's sleep barking. Let's see if we can hear her. She stopped. She's been knocked out. Yeah, I totally agree with you, Holly. I think it don't fall into, I wasn't expecting us to go this direction today, but don't fall into the trap of like, oh, well, so somebody said that this thing was
I
wrong,
can't hear you.
Really?
There we go.
Really?
Now I do. Now I do.
I could hear you the whole time.
Some people fall into the trap of saying like, oh, well, they said this thing was wrong, but this thing wasn't wrong. But yeah, I think, Holly, what you're saying is exactly right. Like, even if they're not 100% accurate on exactly what's wrong, double check for sure. So what we're going to do today, now we have this information, we kind of know what we should do. I've written up 2 sheets from the SCBDA sheets that we used last week and that we kind of broke down. And we're just going to look at what these 2 different sheets imply, what you can get out of them, and how you can, prepare your rehearsal for the next week. When I thought this is all kind of theoretical with this, but imagine that both of these bands are of a similar number of performers across all different sections: brass, woodwinds, guard,
Mhm.
drums. Everybody's generally the same, and generally they are of a comparable skill level
Okay.
among each other. So they were very, very close in this particular caption. Let's also imagine that they're very close all the way across the board. Let's also imagine that they compete with each other all season long. And let's imagine that it's early. We're doing a lot of imagining here. And let's also imagine that this is a sheet from like the second or third week of October. So pretty
Okay.
relatively early in the season, right? So let's look at ensemble number one. I'm going to ask the two of you a little bit about what you noticed. These are both music performance sheets. And if I can ever pull them up, we will check them out. Okay, let's look at sheet number one here. Ooh.
Oh,
Music performance ensemble. Can you see it?
yeah.
Yeah.
We'll look at. I'll kind of make this a little
Well-
smaller so we can see it better.
Can you
Okay, here we
do me
are.
one favor as well? Can you scroll down one more so I can see what the boxes are?
Yeah, we'll go here. I
Just
think
so
you
real.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
can
that
see
fits all
everything
of
pretty
it.
well here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got our composition area here, our achievement area here. Let's just look at some of these comments. So composition, we're really talking about. Oh, sorry. I actually want to start with this one. I'm a liar. Nope, that's an empty one. I definitely want to start with that one. Give me just a second.
We've been doing a lot of sheets, so
I have.
Jordan's-
Yeah, that's true.
Jordan's juggling
You're
a
not
couple
wrong.
different pages.
What?
Anybody who's been an online teacher recently can relate to the struggle, I think, of like, oh, screen share. Why can't I find the thing I was looking at 2 seconds ago? How is this possible? Because I have felt that many times in the last,
Yeah, I'm like,
let's just say even week, but also quarter and since March.
I
Mhm.
need just another minute. I don't know.
It disappeared.
Yeah.
Well, what are the first things? Well, you find that, Mike. I've got a question for you. What's the
What's up?
first thing you look for on a written sheet? I haven't had a written sheet in a long time, but if you had a written sheet like these ones, what would you look for first?
The very first things I'm looking for at this music with like a music sheet.
Mhm.
The very first thing I'm looking for is the numbers. So if it's out of 100 and 100, so 200 points for music ensemble, I have a number of what's in my head of what I would like for us to be around. So if it's like mid-October and like if it's mid-October and it's at this point for most of the groups I work with, we're in the back end of our season. In the Midwest at
Mhm.
least. And like
It's like actually cold there right now.
yeah,
I'm
right.
winding
We only have a
down.
few more weeks, and then BOA is the end of it for us, for everyone here. I mean,
Mhm.
most groups don't do that. So, so I have an idea. If this is our second to last competition or so, I want us probably scoring close to 85 or 90. So the first thing I'm looking for is like kind of where does that match up? I want to be high on that number. Otherwise, like, what's the point of doing the show? So I'm looking at that. So if my idea is like 85 and I see 75, I'm thinking, okay, I've got some work to do. Is basically where my mind's going. And then from there, that's the first thing I'm looking at. It's usually the number. What about you?
Yeah, that's usually where I jump to first. And I'm more interested usually in the difference between the two scores, like the composition score and the achievement score. Because we talked about this a little bit last week for those of you that missed it, or just still need to go back and watch it because it was really, really interesting. We talked a little bit about what the difference in the scores mean, like what it means when your composition score is higher versus when your achievement score is higher. For me, like I know my goal, especially in the color guard world, where like what I do is I'm choreographing, I'm cleaning, and like I'm training, I'm doing all the things for the flat line a lot of the time. So like the composition score is very much within my like bubble of things that I have a lot of control over. Like, so I'm trying to see, is my composition score higher? Is it lower? Is it matching? Like, where are we at? And like early season, I personally want my composition score to be way higher than my achievement score because it's early
sure.
season. But like in your case, what you were just saying, like 75 towards the end of the season, it's pretty nice when the scores are matching each other because it's saying, the composition and the skill level of this group are, matched up. Like,
Right.
it's not super like, it's not too easy for the group or way too hard for the group. Like,
What you did
they
and how
sort
you
of like
did it
leveled out.
are even with each other.
Mhm.
Right.
Tend to agree with that. All right. Let's get to it.
Yeah.
Okay. On that note, here is ensemble number 1. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a lot of information just right off the bat, right? If you don't know where to look, I mean, a lot of people look over here at these numbers, right? That's an easy first place to look. Down here at this number, there's a lot of stuff here. I see some directors, I tried to do some similar things that I see. Some people do like pluses or maybe minuses, talking about some of the things that happen. But let's look. Let's break these down in half, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Let's do this. My brain's rattling. This is good.
Mine is too, but mostly because it's out of gas. Lots of loud, limited soft expression. All right. So this particular band got some credit for their louder dynamics, bless you, but also noted, hey, there wasn't a whole lot in the lower dynamics, right? I think that's
Right.
something that many people have been a part of bands that are guilty of that.
Mhm.
Look for more ways to add layers through moments throughout. This group was kind of boxed in, kept their sound very homogenous throughout the show. And there were some moments where they were showing differentiated skills. In music performance, that could mean things like, connected tenuto playing, articulated faster moments. They had some of those that were through the show.
So what do you do with that kind of feedback? Like, because like what I was saying before, like Color Guard World, I can change choreography, but like, what do you do to fix some of these things that you just got comments on?
Well, for me, we have to look at the achievement comments as well because it's from the same person,
Right.
so they could be informative together. So okay, so this is really important. So like, let's look at for more ways to add layers for moments throughout. So that's a compositional thing. So we'll see the score is 71 and their achievement 77. So there's an issue here.
Right.
They're saying that the performance from the group is stronger than what you compose for them. So they're saying that there's an area that needs improvement, like you need more layers potential. And then I look at a comment and it says, look at end of ballot for alignment. And I'm thinking, well, maybe the thing that the ballot needs at the end of that, maybe the thing that ballot needs that cleans up timing there is additional musical layer that has interest and pulse that adds to. So all of a sudden we create a better transition, which creates a better composition. The composition score maybe raises to a 74, hypothetically in the same composition, at the same contest, but also the achievement would grow because the transition would be better. So like, I see that's a huge connecting point here. The first thing I would do if I was a director for a composition, I would go, we need to probably rewrite this. We need to rewrite this transition properly. That would be the very first thing I would get from this sheet.
I was hoping your brain would kind of go somewhere like that, Mike, and that's great. One of the things I really, not to get too ahead on these sheets, but one of the big things that I wanted to point out was how your solutions ought to be different between these two sheets, even though, as you're going to see, the scores are very, very close to each other. There's a lot of implications about how you solve these problems. I think that's great. You could add a new color. That's also like maybe it's a percussion thing or something like that at the end of the ballot that adds both rhythm for the alignment and also some different color that can talk about new ways of adding layers or variety through the show. I think that's great.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's so many. I mean, you just said like one of the first thing, lots of loud, limited soft.
Right.
Like, you have a ballad? Okay. Like, maybe I'm just going to make a solo part and
Mhm.
cut out the company for a second.
Yeah.
I mean, those 4 measures here and there, I mean, you know, those things, it's, you never want to, like, to me, the magic's really in the transitions.
Mhm.
And I think that's where a lot of things get lost and a lot of things are hurt in a lot of programs.
I
Is that
agree.
we don't know how to do transitions well. It has to make sense visually and musically. And that's hard
Yeah.
to do. And I think that I think that there's a lot of information on here that would increase this score within one day of planning and
Mhm.
one day of teaching
Mhm.
and one day of activity.
And one of the things, like in this one, it shows the achievement score is higher, but it's achieving what they're perceiving the composition is. So
Right.
with the like lots of whoa, my mouth just forgot how to work. Lots of loud, limited, soft expression. You know, they could be assuming that the whole music is written with fortes everywhere, and you know,
Right.
but the ensemble isn't performing it. So how would
Great
they
point.
know if there was, you know,
Right.
mezzo piano moments and pianissimo
And-
moments? Like, there's no way for the judges to recognize that if it's not there, so they can't give points in composition for
Right.
something they can't tell is there. So it's one of those things where achievement, like the scores raise each other up.
Yeah. You can't reward what you don't see or what's
Yeah.
not there. Right.
Right.
And it's
Agreed.
not like
That's
they
a
get
great
a
point.
score in the drill before they watch the show. They just get to watch the
Just
show.
an interpretation of what they see. Absolutely. They don't get all of the details beforehand. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So there's definitely lots of things that you can do to
So-
focus on the composition side that will also affect the achievement side.
So the goal for me, and I think a healthy goal for in general, would be to go, okay, my goal next week is not to score a 75 and an 80 because
Right.
who cares? Because that's a different
that's the
contest
same
and
margin.
yeah, I mean,
Right.
everyone's different and who knows.
Right.
But like, yeah, but on the other side of it, it's like I said, I like to go on my things with like a number in my mind, and like I would like to see it raise, sure, but the biggest thing educationally would be I don't want to see that comment next week. So
Yeah, right.
if next week happens and I don't see a comment about transitions or a lack of layering, if I don't see those comments the next week, there will be either more positive comments, which is great, and probably a higher score that reflects, or they're going to hear something else that the other person's going to hear.
Yeah.
And that's going to help
Right.
as well.
Right.
So
That's all great points. And you know, at the end of the day, like you're absolutely right. The numbers aren't the most important thing. What's important is that we're taking this educational thing and we're making it a little bit better. Right.
Mhm.
So
well,
agreed.
I think we can talk to our students like this.
Mhm.
One of the things I think a lot of students are smarter than sometimes we always think. And then they like a transparency. I think it's fun to break down things like this and go, listen, we're not aiming for first place. Like,
Right.
but this is what like we really want to focus on. Like, can you hear the difference? And like really play the 2 weeks to them. And like who doesn't get excited getting better? Everyone likes getting better.
True.
Right.
So like
It's fun even to say, like, why do you think the judge said this? Like,
Right.
have
Get
them
'em involved.
analyze the show
Yeah.
that they performed. Like,
Yeah.
why do you think we're
Absolutely.
getting these comments?
Absolutely. And I think that kind of transparency to your staff and to your students, I think that usually that students part sometimes gets a little bit lost. But I think that students can really appreciate this.
And it meets the national performing arts standards. Like having them analyzing performances is a standard that we are all making it a goal to, you know, follow and achieve. And the standards are, you know, there for a reason. And it's good when you can just use a comment and also be checking off a box on the national standards that you're trying to do in addition to, you know, marching band and having fun and competitions and all the things. So don't forget.
Don't forget. Yeah.
The more you know.
This is great discussion. I love this. The last thing that I'll say about this one, last week we talked about was gonna say like coded judge language, but like things that they're trying to tell you um, that they may just not have the time to say on tape, right? And this particular judge, me, I'm implying that what you have is the major focus of improvement. What's
Right.
like the composition is your focus of improvement compared to the achievement. You are achieving at a high level compared to what is available to achieve. So
Right.
solutions that are focused on the composition are probably going to drive the teaching side, the achievement side forward. So this group was just barely edged out by ensemble number 2.
Oof.
We're going to see a
The
very different.
rivals. They're
Yeah,
from the same
rivals.
school district. They're sister
Yep.
schools.
This is
And
yeah,
it's a 2-point final difference.
right. It's a 2 point out of 200, so it's 1 point in the entire caption that's different between the two of them, right? But very, very different scores. And we'll talk about what the implications of for the rest of the season are about that as well.
Yes.
We can see that this group got comments on great variety between and within movements. So there was variety through a composition and then a contrast from, from a movement of the composition and then from one to itself. Frequent change of styles and textures continue to develop the range of skills throughout, right?
The moment you see that,
Yes.
Continue.
the moment
That
you see that
word.
from in a composition box,
Right.
it is a red flag going, hey, there's a lack of technique or achievement being done where like certain skill sets, certain things cannot be played. And so like that's to me that's immediately that's the count. That's like, okay,
right,
where's this going?
Yeah, when I think of continue to develop, it's the fact that hey, the things are there. It's apparent that you have an effort in putting these things forward. Continue to work on that, and you're going to continue to be rewarded, right?
Right.
And then kind of the opposite of the other group here: strong fundamental sound, but stay consistent, right? So when we look down at our boxes here, we have sometimes, right? Box 1 lacks readability. Box 5, you do this all the time. Right now, we're really in the middle of box 3 here. Sometimes stay consistent with your fundamental sound. Tone quality changes as responsibilities are added. Much demand in show at end of each movement. What was I writing here? I don't even know what I was writing.
That's just like a judge, though.
Yeah.
You have to figure out what the judge is trying to say.
The dash. It's a second thought. There's a lot of demand. Look at the end of each movement to improve clarity and balance. So I noticed with this particular group that there was a tendency at the end of each movement for it to lose its clarity. That could be, for the record, that could be a rehearsal thing, right? How many times have you gone into a rehearsal to clean a show and start at the beginning of the show and move to the end of a movement, beginning to the end, beginning to the end? That could cause some performance deficiencies because you're always focused on the beginning, and by the time you're worn out in the rehearsal at the end, you're running the end of the stuff, right? So that could be a rehearsal thing that you could solve, right?
Yeah. It happens with entire movements too. Like, oh, we've done part 1 for 3 weeks, and it's been a long time since we've cleaned 2 and 3. And
you have a finite amount of time to rehearse, so it's about making the most with what little time you do have. It wouldn't be much to compete if we could just practice for infinite amount of time. We gotta
man, these two bands have a very different way forward.
Yes.
Like, wow, like I know that's like what you set up in this, but after looking at them, it's like, wow, they do not have the same Monday night rehearsal coming up.
Well, I would even say that one group is in a much better situation than the other as well. I would even say.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say. Yeah, I mean,
I'm curious if we're all thinking the same band. I think we are. But what if we're
I would the second band that we just saw.
Yeah.
Would be in my mind the one that is showing that has room to grow on the achievement more.
Yeah, and to me, I think they have in my personal. What is happening? Why am I losing my? I don't know what's going on here. It keeps like.
I don't know.
This is what happened with the sheet earlier.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, to me, this group is actually probably set up for the most success, and here's why. To me, this group has the range of skills that just aren't quite there yet. Now,
Yeah.
to be clear, if this was November, it would be a very different conversation. If it was
Yeah,
November,
I would agree.
I would be reflecting and saying, okay, well, we probably bit off a little bit more than we could chew, right? We
Right.
probably did a little too much and we didn't really set up our students for the correct performance. But considering it's the beginning of October, we've got a whole month to go. What I'm reading on these sheets is, and what I intended on these sheets is that this particular group has honestly kind of an easier path forward because they've got the right stuff. They just need to
Mhm.
continue to develop their students.
They-
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, as opposed to the other group who, even if maybe they're better performers, quote unquote, they
Mhm.
still gotta learn new stuff, probably some new edits and stuff, and that comes with not just learning something new, but then having to clean it. So
Right.
they've got kind of a 2-step process, and
Yeah.
I mean, I would much rather be in the second ensemble's position.
Situation. Yeah.
Just I mean, that's when you just say, all right, listen, y'all
We're gonna
better
clean
come
this.
ready with your Hackman sacks and water because we're gonna use a lot of cleaning next week, and you're gonna cry a lot, but I don't care. Like we're doing this. Like
You're going to cry a lot. We're going to do
it's true. Like that's one of those weeks where you're like, it's gonna suck a little
Yeah.
bit. We all know it, but we got to do it.
Yeah,
Like,
for sure. It could be, I mean, it's different with every judge. Even within a show, you're going to have 4 to 8 judges. It's going to be different within their opinions as well. But it could be that group 1 is doing what they do really well, but they're not doing quite as much of a range of things, right? There's so many different options and things that could be going on. But yeah, it seems like ensemble number 2 is going to be in a better position. They've got the right engine. They've just got to make sure all the parts around it are working correctly. Right.
Yeah.
So, Mike, earlier you mentioned how you would I'll go back to the sheets. You mentioned that you would really focus on some arranging solutions with group number 1. What are some examples of some things you might do based on this information for ensemble number 2?
oh, okay. Well, I'm just reading.
Good.
Okay. Well, there's several things. The first thing I'm informed is that there's probably an issue. There's probably a pretty large gap between my top performers and my lower performers. So there's a strong fundamental sound that's not always consistent, or tone quality changes. Probably not happening from my top half, but there's probably a gap. And so it could be that, it could be some of the top as well, but like most likely I need to work on bringing up the skill set. So to me, if I saw this, most likely the next week would have sectionals for sure to work on some fundamentals, and probably from there even a breakdown even more. A lot of times during weeks like this, I pull out the actual individual couple folks and work with them.
Yeah.
And then like during that time, and then like, so you bring up an individual level. Most likely I would have made the connection that our endings are less clear because of pacing and rehearsal. So I'd probably shift that up and work from backwards to forward one night. But to me, the way you structure rehearsal the next week, and if you do it well with utilizing your staff and pulling out individuals and like really listening and critiquing, like to me, you don't have to even change the content much. You just got to get a little rehearsal time with them. And so I honestly, that's the biggest thing I would see here, is that it would be a matter of pretty intense week of rehearsals, but a lot of individual attention, because that's where the problems are happening. If you had, this is music performance ensemble, they don't have a music performance individual, but if they did have a music performance individual, I almost guarantee you it'd be significantly lower than 70 if they're seeing things like that. So,
For sure.
right. So that's what I'm being informed right here. That's what I mean. Cool. This was mostly informed rehearsal practices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So great stuff. Some of the things I expected you to say, and some that I didn't. So that's really cool to hear your take just on the fly of this imaginary sheet, an imaginary ensemble, and you're still able to, like, in 3 seconds find solutions, because that's what we do, right? That's our job, find solutions.
The only thing that changes from year to year is the music and the kids. but the
Mhm.
rehearsal planning skills and methods are, you just keep learning more methods and tools.
You sure do. So that's what's really fun about it is
That's my favorite
I
part. Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
keep thinking that the real key is a very it's like I always think of the Patriots organization. I know I say them sometimes, and sorry if anyone's listening and they go, "Oh, I hate those people." Well, okay, but Bill Belichick. No, the Patriots they have a system. Like do your job, and they have like a whole system based around this like perfect operations, like planning and stuff. And I really think that that's kind of like the beautiful thing about like rehearsal and like just the marching season is like if you really plan it out and you really set goals and pace things, like you can objectively come pretty close to designing a perfect season of what that would look like.
Right.
And that's what's exciting is like it kind of that won't really ever stop.
Hmm.
So
It's like always, how can we make the next season better from the beginning?
and
Oh, it's-
you
But
can't
also like
That's my
with the
favorite part.
shows, like how to make the next week better.
Right.
right.
My favorite month is November. Mostly because it means like for marching band in Arizona, we still have like 2 shows, maybe
Mhm.
3 shows. People in the Midwest are like,
I'm
what?
in.
Like,
Done with the
Yeah,
the
right.
Christmas
I'm in
November
Missouri.
rehearsals
concerts.
are just like, okay, what are the finishing touches we could put on this? Like, we're starting in July just like everyone else, but we're going on an extra 3 weeks. So like, it's just fun getting to see how good you can get it. And like, all these tapes are just extra feedback from people who haven't seen your show before.
Mhm.
And after you've been doing it for 4 months, like you need somebody else's eyes on it anyway. So I don't know. It's fun getting new
Yeah.
tapes every week.
Jordan, I saw you. I heard your breath in the mouth. I don't know. I don't know if you want to go first.
No, go for it.
I have found, and this is from personal experience back a decade ago when I was like 20, and a young gun 20-year-old doing brass tech stuff. I was obsessed about score sheets because I was also arranging for some of the groups I worked with, and I would obsess and like really like look over the weekend, just like you said, Jordan, you do as well, or you have. I have found that most of the information from other people, from judges, from people who are well respected in the field or other educators, is important because it means that you're not afraid of like feedback and also growing and getting better.
Mhm.
And I think the number one thing I know about people or the number one thing I see from people who don't want to take judges' comments serious or like really look at like the overall feedback or anything or dismiss it immediately comes from kind of insecurities themselves about their own
Mhm.
program and what they're doing. That they know that what they've been hearing all semester is going to be validated and like it's not a good thing. And so like I think that it's easy to dismiss certain things, but the one thing I really want to encourage people is to realize that you can't do this music thing in your own little bubble. The whole purpose of
Yeah.
it is to make others better and like enjoy it. So like if you're gonna actually want to do that, you gotta let people who know what they're doing listen to your stuff sometimes.
Yep.
So don't be afraid to be wrong because that's okay. Your students are wrong. You tell them, well,
Mhm.
okay, same for us. So
Yeah, I think it's hard. Our activity isn't inherently it's hard to compare in our activity in a very realistic way. And that's why I think, judges have a great place in our activity. Great judges are just like the lifeblood of this activity. For like when you're talking about the Patriots, like a football coach, it's real easy to tell who does their job well and who doesn't. Because
oh,
like we said last week, a touchdown, 6 points, right? Like there's a
go
very
Browns.
measurable, yeah, they're killing it, all right? Like a
Form on, baby.
bizarre.
Woo!
What is happening? Oh
Baker
man.
Mayfield's happening.
Sometimes I just forget they exist, and it's like, oh, they're winning. Okay.
they're a team. We have the Cardinals out here, so
They're okay.
Yeah.
bold statement. Yeah, no, it's I think it's easy for people to really let your ego get in the way a little bit.
Mhm.
Because we work very hard. I don't know a band director who doesn't work super hard at their job, but yeah, it's great. Like, shed the ego, be ready to find out what you don't do well, and then find a way to do it better. Right? That's the best part of the process.
Remember this: if you're watching a football team and they have 50% completion rate, and their percentages are low across the board, and you on a marching band score 50%, remember they have someone actively trying to make them lose, and you
Right.
don't. So don't forget that important part. All right,
Oh, no.
like if you're scoring 50%, you need to do better. Okay, so like,
I remember.
Man. And the little like,
I remember Chipper Jones talking one time about how, as a baseball player, you can miss 6 out of every 4 attempts and be the best player at all time at your position. And how crazy that is. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
you can miss 6 out of every 10 at bats and be
right,
one of the greatest of all time.
right,
You
right.
know, it's
If
crazy.
you miss 6 out of every 10 notes,
someone's
you're
throwing a
in a
curveball.
Yeah,
bad spot.
not so good. You've seen that
Imagine
Jack
a
Stamp
B-
video, right?
Imagine a B flat
I've seen
scale
that.
where the only notes you get right are B flat.
Right. Well, yeah. Cool.
Wow.
So, final takeaways. We've kind of gone through a broad tapestry of things here, and that's been really great. I'm glad. It's always cool to, as much as we talk, I just think it's really cool to hear both of you talk about your philosophies of education and competition and things like that. I think it's great stuff to talk about. Just remember this: like, be open to suggestions. Be aware that most people are good at picking out when things are wrong, even if they don't pick out exactly what is wrong.
Mhm.
And distill that. You've got your own cycle of improvement that you can go through to make things better. I'll ask the two of you for your final thoughts in just a second. I'll remind you guys, we are Sundays from now on, our design detail day until further notice. We started this in the middle of COVID, and when everybody was like not doing anything on Friday nights at the start of this, we're like, well, why don't we do this on Friday nights? Well, like, now most people have, like, full-time jobs that they're back to, and teaching band all day, and
Mhm.
probably don't want to
Having
come.
football games.
Yeah, right. And so we figured people probably don't want to come home and like immediately go into like some learning development stuff immediately. So we thought Sunday would be a better day to do this. We've also got our blogs and other content on Wednesdays as well. So always check out our site
And-
on Wednesdays.
You're looking ahead.
Time.
You're looking ahead another couple of Wednesdays from now, probably for another game night, trivia night, or something.
Yeah, we had trivia
Spooky
night the other
themed.
night. It was so fun.
It was a good time.
Yeah. We had Max, right? Was
Yeah.
Max won.
the winner.
Max
He was a
one, and then
band
Grand
director
Tees.
out in Missouri.
Yep.
Mhm.
And Grand Tees was our runner up. It was a good time. We had a really great
It
time.
was.
So
Yeah.
come and play with us. To the two of you, final thoughts on the judging improvement process.
Okay. I think no matter what level you and your band are at, as like a director or coach or, tech, whatever, you can have the best band and still get feedback that can be applied. Like, maybe you think you're better than this judge, but there's always still something you can learn.
Mhm.
And even if it's not the same as somebody who just started teaching this year. First, so no matter what age you are, there's always something you can get from a new perspective.
Well said.
My thing is this: align your judging in your shows and competition, whatever you're doing, with your long-term goals. So if you want to be competitive and you want to do it well, make sure you're going to shows that have quality judging, that you have trusted circuits and trusted shows, and things that are managed well. If you're looking to do it some, okay, well then that might, like, you're looking to compete some and mostly do Friday football, great. Think about how that impacts. But I think one of the big things is like aligning, like, what your comments are and what you get with your band and your resources. So like, if you're a staff of, like, if you're competing and you got a staff of 7 or 8 people, It'd be a real shame not to be having them get those caption sheets and really dictating what's going on. Your job as a director is to kind of, like if you're a band director, is to really help facilitate that and hear their feedback and help give resources. But like if you got a large staff and you're really trying to be competitive, well, maybe your arranger should get your music effects sheet, and maybe your assistant band director who usually does music should get music ensemble, and from there, you get the point. So like whatever, you have to have a purpose for going that isn't a trophy or for first place. So like if it's so whatever that reason is, understand that reason and make sure you're doing that justice. So that as long as you're doing that, it doesn't really matter what else you do, because like that's going to align with your director's philosophy, and hopefully whatever kid goes through for 4 years is going to get a good education and experience based on that philosophy. So, so anyways, I think that you really have to use this stuff wisely.
Yeah, absolutely. We hope this has helped enlighten you towards solutions, towards the value of judging, and some of the other things that you can take beyond just a cumulative number at the end of the day. Thanks for joining us. We've been doing judging stuff for like 2.5 hours worth of content now. So if you've stuck with us through that, thanks. Hopefully you've gotten a lot out of it. We're going to be back next Sunday, same time, same place. We hope to see you then.
Yeah.
Take care.
Take
everybody.
Thanks for being here.